Kellyvision. Kellyvision.
This week on Kellyvision, we're looking at stunts. And I'm here at Halfpenny Green Airfield near Birmingham, where Central Television are filming a sequence for their action-adventure drama, The Zero Option. Now, the stunts, of course, are not being done by the actors themselves, because if an actor gets hurt, that means he's off work for a few days, production stops, costs a lot of money. So the people who do the tough work are called stunt doubles, and they're Andy and Tip, very experienced men here behind me. Roy Alon is the stunt arranger on this film. He's worked on Superman and Bonds galore and Dempsey and Makepeace. So let's have a word with them and see how they plan the whole thing. Roy, can you take a couple of minutes out? Potentially very dangerous.
Indeed it is, sir, yes, and an awful lot can go wrong, so you need belt and braces, which is why we double link every piece of equipment that we've got. We've got some links in the plane there that we will lock onto.
When you say double link, you mean there's two of everything?
There is two of everything, because you should never rely on one single piece of equipment. And the equipment that you use, the best that money can buy is only just good enough on a stunt like this. Because when all said and done, the two men are risking their lives, and anything should go wrong, we could have a very big problem.
So tip-tipping will be attached to the plane at all times by this?
Yes, by both links. And same with Andy here, our second stunt artist. He's got a double link on there. And the two men will be hanging outside the plane, executing a fight, the end of which one of the men is seen to fall.
Now, do they know here on the ground how that fight will go, Tip? I mean, or do you organise that in the air?
Well, Roy Allen has given us his idea of how he wants the fight to go, and so we'll work our best on the ground. We'll do a dirt dive, as it were, on the best on our ground of what we want to achieve. But only
dirt dive?
A dirt dive.
What's
It's a skydive phrase. We rehearse on the ground what we're going to do in the air.
Yes.
And as soon as we're in the air, we'll find out the restrictions we may have and have to alter accordingly.
That's why I want to lock onto this main spar here underneath the seat. That is really good and solid. If I could find two more like that, we've cracked it. I don't want to use these because they're just on rails and they're very flimsy. Hanging from here and down, you're going to be really low. I'd rather one hand was on here and your right hand was on there, leaving one hand free, so that if all this lot fell apart and you drop down, then you're onto this. So use this as a primary and this as a secondary, because if you get onto this one, you're way down and it's a hell of a climb back.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you were saying, that should get that shot, shouldn't it? Because you'll see the guy hanging off the door, and you'll see the other chappie on the wing, and the ground will be, so you'll know you're in the air.
Yeah. Yes, it looks terrifying.
Now, the company that designs, develops and builds all the apparatus you need so you can shoot it for a film, and indeed they do lots of specialist equipment for stunt movies, is a company called Bickers Action Enterprises. And the man behind all that is this chap here, Dave Bickers, right here in the heart of Suffolk. Not really the place you'd expect to find this sort of thing, I don't think. Dave, now then, what is all this machine in here for? What's it going to do to this car? What have you been asked to do then?
Well, this can turn, you can get a car to turn over in a certain place every time, not anywhere. I mean, when you press the button, it happens. So it's an air cannon, but actually it works on nitrogen, because air could explode if you get oil with it.
So you'd use this in a circumstance where a script in a film says we need a car to roll, and you can make that car roll exactly the same way every time?
Yes, if the stuntman pressed the button at the right time.
So show me, what is this?
Right, over there we have a cylinder of gas, nitrogen gas, which when we connect it in here, energizes this cylinder. In other words, fill that cylinder full of gas, which is trying to get out. There's no explosions, it's just pressurized gas. And in here, there's a big valve, so when the stuntman pressed the button, this valve is turned on, the gas rushes around here, gets on top of this piston, which pushes, they can't get past it, so it pushes the piston out the bottom, and it can't go out the bottom because the road is there, so it flips the car up in the air.
What's keeping the piston in?
Well, we have a bolt at the moment, a 6mm bolt in the bottom, which gives it a little bit of pressure before it snaps.
So it builds up,
builds up pressure, snaps, and there you go.
Throws the car over. Dave, thanks very much. Now, the chap who has to drive the car, mind your hand there, the chap who has to drive the car and roll it is this man, Jim Dowdle. Jim, what do you have to do then? I mean, you've got to press buttons and drive cars at the same time.
Well, basically, the idea is that you bring the car up to wherever the director wants it to actually roll over, and then you've got to flip it sideways so that as the car comes almost parallel with the camera, if you like. So the whole car is sliding sideways. That's when I push the button, and that's off she goes.
Now, how many spins will the car do then before it stops?
Depends on the amount of pressure that Dave puts in the cannon and the speed that I'm doing initially. I mean, if I'm doing 60 and there's a good bit of pressure in the cannon, we reckon we can probably get 3.5 rolls out of it.
So 3.5 spins at 60 mile per hour, that's really quite hairy. What kind of precautions do you take then as far as safety is concerned?
Well, Dave puts in a roll cage inside the car, which is made of the best materials you can get. Then I'm actually lashed inside there in a 5-point racing harness with a helmet on, and I also have a neck brace here, because probably the worst aspect of rolling a car over at that speed is the enormous amount of energy which is transmitted into your spine to give you whiplash. So it's really essential that you have something to keep yourself absolutely rigid so you don't get a problem there. And then all I've got to really worry about is hitting that button on the steering wheel at the right moment. But the whole thing is, we never do anything until we're absolutely happy that we've covered every eventuality there is. There is no such thing as the ultimate safe stunt. You cannot eliminate every single, factor of danger from it. But we do everything possible, and we won't go until it's absolutely, in our minds, 100% we've covered everything.
Oh, what good grief. Come and have a look at this, see what kind of damage it's sustained. Now, if you look inside at the car, you can see that the roll bar is completely sound, no damage at all. So if Jim had been in the car at that time, he'd have survived quite neatly, providing he'd stayed in the car. Brave man. Now, that happened at 0 mile per hour. That was one complete turn. So you can imagine what it looked like at about 60 mile per hour. In fact, let's see the whole thing again in slow motion. Quite spectacular.
Exhausting. Why? Shattered.
Tip was out first. I think it was hanging to quite a degree. I came to take my fixing. It was just one of those things that the fixing was come loose some way. Anyway, when we got out there, I knew we sort of have to assume when the guy is tired. I knew that I was getting tired, so I knew that Tip must be very tired at that point, wouldn't it? But you get pretty, into it all, so you don't realise how tired you are till you start to sort of pull in on muscles again, and they're getting tired, aren't they, out there?
Yeah, I was hanging out there for maybe 2 minutes before he joined me, and when I'm there by myself, I haven't got anyone to buffet with the slipstream.
Yeah.
So
is that much more powerful than you thought it would be?
I'm used to it from skydiving. What I'm not used to is letting it play with me. Andy eventually came to join me. I say it was exhausting, but we're still happy. We couldn't speak to each other in the air. Obviously, it's too noisy. We already agreed the preset fight routine, which we went through 2 or 3 times, scrabbling and slipping, scrabbling and slipping. I found I could take one hand off and float back. He would go and put a hand on my face, and I'd hold his hand onto my face and look like he was fighting.
So you can't communicate at all on that?
We can't hear each other, no, it's just... something like that, that's all I could do. And then the fun started. Plan A was present my hand to Roy, the arranger, and Andy, to pull me in. And they were heaving and nothing was happening. And I was trying to get all my strength together, knowing I was going to need it in a minute. And that didn't work. In the end, we found, so from now on we know, that even with no strength in the arms, it's strength in your legs. And of course, Roy leant that far out, he was right out the plane. I could just present my knee to him there. Yeah. And he held on.
So how many times will you rehearse this again now?
We shot it, we shot the rehearsal, and there is footage there to use for all the hanging stuff we need.
Yeah.
We now need to no need to do any more rehearsals, we're ready to shoot every time now.
It's amazing the things you find in Dave Bickers' back garden. Look at this lot over here. That blue car yonder, the other side of the fence, and this yellow car here, just this side of the fence, obviously lined up for some stunt or other. And right by me here is a car on a ramp. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, that this car and those cars there might meet up in the not-too-distant future? Hang on, Dave's here, he'll explain. Dave, what's all this about, mate?
Well, we're just doing a test. We haven't used this one before, not with a car on it, so the idea is we hope to get this car hit the blue one.
Good grief. So would this be a stunt you'd do in a movie? When would you see this sort of thing happening?
Well, when you couldn't put a stuntman in the car, because it could be over a cliff, so you wouldn't really want a stuntman in it, or you're going to blow the car up. Ah. We wouldn't actually blow it up, that'd be a special effects job. So it's the same sort of system as the Volkswagen going in here.
Yeah.
But it's a much longer ram, and...
there's this pipe here, that's like the pipe in the Volkswagen.
That's correct, yes. But it's a lot longer push, so it should go a lot further.
How far do you think, in fact, it will go?
I hope it'll get up there, and not into next field, because I don't own that one.
Fine. I'll get out of the way. Good luck.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now, by my reckoning, I think that's about 30 metres from the ramp to where the car actually came to a halt at the end. And the blue car, which you hit on its way through, that's about 20 metres. So it was in the air for 20 metres. And it's all uphill. And you can see why you wouldn't want to stick a stuntman in a car like that, no matter how well protected he was. He'd have to be a complete nutter to sit in a car for that kind of stunt. Plus, to add to the effect, you could, of course, explode the car, like Dave said, in mid-air with pyrotechnics, and that would look quite spectacular in the film, the end result. Now, the whole thing was over in a blink of an eye. You probably missed it if you were wiping your nose or something when it happened. So the best way to watch it back is like this, in slow motion. Here's another way of turning a vehicle over without using high-pressure air and rams and things. It's this piece of apparatus here. It's called a pipe ramp, apparently, and this is what you do with it. Now, I'm glad you didn't attempt that at speed this time, Jim, otherwise you'd have trashed the crew here. But when would you use this, and how would you use it?
Well, when we've got a situation where there's a possibility where we can disguise a ramp, supposing a car's supposed to drive into a fruit stall or something else like that, then we can disguise it because of the narrowness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put the fruit stall in front of it, have all the fruit or the bottles or whatever it is going everywhere as you turn over. Also, obviously, it's cheaper than having the cannon and the prepared in the back and everything else. But obviously, we wouldn't use this particular vehicle as is at the moment because it's totally unprepared. There's no roll cage, there's no seat belts or anything like that. So, I mean, this is just purely for your demonstration.
So this is for a straight line thing where you go towards the camera and you just flip it over onto the side.
The difference with this is that you don't, with a normal flat ramp, you drive up it on the wheels. With this, you use the body or the chassis of the car to go up the ramp, which means that none of the energy is absorbed by the suspension, so that when you hit that little kicker, there's a little tail just on the end of the ramp there. When you hit that, it kicks the whole of the front of the car up in the air for 9 times out of 10. It rises up like that, makes it turn and comes right down on the far corner of the car first, and then it somersaults from there.
You do it at what kind of speed?
40, 50, 55 if you really want to get a long way, but then again, you know, you've got to have the car really
solid,
reinforced there, and again, the neck brace and all the other bits of kit on.
In a German road test, one car beat the Mercedes 190. In America, the coupe version beat the Porsche 944. Yet it's in the same price range as, say, a Cavalier or a Montego.
We had to get both the cars moving along at about 30 miles an hour, and then David stood on the rig on the cars to guide me in, because there comes a certain point when you can no longer see the ramps, because the ramps only gave me about 3/4 of an inch clearance on either side of the width of the tyre. Very, very narrow, so we could get the maximum shot of the car. And then I come up to the ramps, and when I figure it's about right, he might just go that way or that way a bit, and when he drops his hand, I've got to go. And I climb up onto the roof, and that's the first one, and then we cut again, and then we do a second one of it actually coming onto the roof from a side angle, and then the third time round we put another little ramp just to get us down over the bonnet, but the car did actually jump down off the bonnet onto the ground without the ramp there.
Dave, how on earth do you approach trying to get a car to drive up the inside of a lighthouse, which is something you did in the commercial?
Well, it wasn't really a lighthouse, not a real one, so they built a bigger version of the steps and everything, and we done a few mods to the car and got it up there.
Jim, driving a car up the inside of that lighthouse, how was that for you?
Yeah, quite tricky. I mean, we'd done, you know, a certain amount of experimentation to get exactly the right tread length and depth so that the car would clear it. And because you've got a circular staircase that was very narrow, it was important to take absolutely the right line. Plus the fact that when you got up to the top of the staircase, you were then, I suppose we were about 25 feet off the ground, finishing up on a very narrow platform. So if you actually missed the brake, it was good night Irene off the end, straight into the deck again.
Probably my favourite car stunt in a commercial, where the car's chased all over Europe and eventually he's caught in the Blackwall Tunnel in London and actually drives around the inside of that tunnel. Now, you did that, didn't you? How was that one done?
Well, there's a few tricks, but not camera tricks. The car actually went round a tunnel, and I'm not going to tell you how we done it.
Yeah, we used the famous gizmo.
The famous gizmo. That one's a secret, is it?
That one's a secret, yeah.
Right.
Back at Halfpenny Green, they've finished rehearsals and they're going for a take. The cameraman is strapped into the helicopter to fly alongside the plane and get the best shots of the action. He's using a very expensive camera mount, which stops the camera from bouncing around during flight and gives you a steady picture on the screen. The stuntmen are making a living the hard way, giving the action everything they've got. In the finished drama, the sequence will look fantastic, and no one will think about the dangers and expense involved in getting it on film. The cameraman seems to have got the shots he needs, and they're back on the ground. Let's see how the two stunt doubles feel after their taste of the high life.
Sorry, it's the last one of the day, aren't you? I don't know what to say anymore. How was that one? You all right?
It's very heavy going up there. The wind is a lot stronger than you believe, really. Hanging off helicopters, we're okay. We've been lucky in the past. It's only 60 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour, but up there doing 90 and 100, it's a little bit like being dragged behind a speedboat when you've fallen off water skis and you can't let go of the ski toe.
Actually good description. Yeah.
And the coat. If we're going to lose your jacket, Tip.
Yeah, it whips me in the face as well. It seems to take so long for the ground. I mean, it wasn't the ground camera's fault. We took a long time for the ground cameras. Basically, we did 3 takes, didn't we?
That was spectacular, seeing you hanging out at low level.
The problem then was, because my cable wasn't at my arm as before, it was hanging free, I suddenly realised we were going right over the camera. He sat on the wing strut, and I had to jam my hand up to hide the cable. So all the strain was on the arms again, and do a bit of acting as well.
But now you're exhausted, yeah?
A little bit.
Shattered.
Yeah.
And
A little bit, I've got to tell you.
I mean, he needs all the strength in the world because he's going to hang out and give me a brace so I can pull myself in the plane. And I was shattered.
You want more money, don't keep
I was
saying that.
shattered.
We agreed the money, sir, before
They started panicking when I...
Chris Griffin, the producer. He's happy. Well, you did it safely. Well done. Terrific. I can't wait to see how it looks.
So in the final version, the film will be cut so that it looks as though the actors have done the dangerous bits themselves. And what happens in the end? Does anyone fall from the plane? That's a secret that will only be revealed when you watch the Zero option itself.
Well, that brings us sadly to the end of the first series of Kellyvision. I've had a really good time. How about you, Gaz?
Yeah, it was brilliant. See you again. Ta-ra.
Till next time, goodbye.
Kellyvision?